Thanksgiving is one of our most beautiful national traditions. Even if tomorrow we're going to go and tackle each other over big screen TVs. As we celebrate this feast, and having spent a number of years overseas, it was beautiful to see how people were so interested in this feast day that we have. A feast dedicated completely to giving thanks, to sharing, to come together as a family. And in today's gospel, we are reminded of this gratitude, this deeply Christian virtue that permeates our entire life as Christians. In fact, our greatest celebration, the Eucharist, means literally thanksgiving, gratitude, recognizing the gifts that we have received from God. And we have this case in the gospel today of these 10 men who were healed from leprosy, and only one returns to give thanks. And leprosy was a terrible thing. It was a terrible thing physically to be suffering this, to basically have your extremities rotting on your body and falling off. Sorry for the graphic description. But what was even worse was the social isolation. Not just because it was contagious, but because society by and large thought that you had done something to deserve that you should be separated from the rest of society as a sinner. You had done something terrible must have happened that you did, that you deserved this. So when these men receive this healing, it's not only a physical healing, but it reinserts them into society. It gives them a new shot at life. Their perspectives for life were to be hidden away in a cave, maybe with some other lepers, receiving gifts of food, whatever people could spare, and basically waiting for death. So when they receive this healing, it's a completely new lease on life. And we see the reaction of 9 of them at least, that they disappear. But they probably disappear to do good things. They realized that they were healed. They ran back to their families. They ran back to their place of origin. They were just so excited in the healing that they had received that they forgot to go back and receive the greatest gift. And it's only this foreigner who recognizes, I have been healed. I need to go back and give thanks. And he's the one that actually receives the greatest gift. Because throughout the Gospels, healings are only done to increase faith. Healing is always at the service of growing in relationship with God. And that's what happens to this foreigner. He's walking along, he realizes that he's healed, and he goes back to Jesus to give thanks. And Jesus tells him, go forth, your faith has saved you. The others received physical healing. They went back to their ordinary lives. But the Samaritan received the gift of faith. Something much more important, much more lasting, something that's a gift for eternity. And sometimes I think in the Gospels we can kind of separate, well, there's the good guys and the bad guys in the Gospel. We always have Jesus and the Pharisees. So we have the 9, and then we have this one who came back, and he's really the good guy. But oftentimes we fail to realize that we're usually, or that at least there's a part of us. There's a little Pharisee inside of us, and there's a little one of these 9 guys inside of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to be reminded to be thankful. It's something that we have to learn. It's almost a new language. And in fact, it's God's language. It's the language of God's gifts. And the more we become fluent in that, the more we can learn to see God in all things. And St. Ignatius has that beautiful phrase in his spiritual exercises, to learn to discover God in all things. And the key to that is gratitude, which is why he insists on doing it each day in the examen prayer. That as we examine our lives, we begin with gratitude, because it's the language of God. And learning a new language is always a really interesting experience, because, as children, we kind of learn it at home and we're not really conscious of it. But as an adult, if you learn a new language, At first, you can't understand anything. You're in a crowd of people, you're seated at a table, you're walking through an airport, and you just hear kind of this garbled sounds. And little by little, as you start to learn the language, you pick up here and there on, oh, I understood that word. Oh, I understood another word. And then little by little, you start to understand full phrases and conversations, and you can speak in them. And something that was at first hostile, or at least unknown and foreign, then becomes known, becomes familiar. You feel safer. You feel that you can enter in and commune in this, that you're part of this, that you can enter into the conversation. And oftentimes we forget that that's what gratitude is. Oftentimes we'll pick up on little bits of gratitude. Every once in a while we'll feel emotion of gratitude for something that happens in our lives. And we'll recognize it. Oh, there's a word. And then we'll go back to our ordinary lives. Because we have so many obstacles to gratitude. Our benchmark emotion in our American society today is, how are you doing? I'm busy. It's like the number one response. And I would invite you to ask anyone as you go into Thanksgiving meals this afternoon, how many times you ask someone, hey, how's it going? Good. Busy. Not good. Grateful. Good. Hopeful. Good. Enjoying life. No, I'm good. Busy. And that's what happened to these 9. They got busy right away. They weren't able to pick up on this language of gratitude. And then the more that we practice gratitude, the more that we start to recognize in gratitude the things around us, the more fluent we become. And then it's not just a sporadic gratitude for something that happened, that I woke up one morning and the sun was out and we're in Oregon and it's November and we're like, wow, the sun's out. This is amazing. The other 30 days of the month, there won't be any sun in the morning. But then every day we'll start to realize little things. And then eventually it will become our language. We'll learn to speak God's language. And other words that are tied to this gratitude that we see throughout the scriptures are glorifying God, praising God, which are just other ways of saying gratitude. It's not gratitude for God's gifts, it's gratitude for who God is. That's what praise is. And as we learn little by little to grow in gratitude, we begin to see God in all things. And what are we supposed to be grateful for? Everything. That's what we're supposed to be grateful for. Everything, 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 everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, that's a movie. All of those things that happen in our lives. The good things that are happening because they are graces that are directly, and those are the ones that we need to begin with because they're easiest for us to see. But there's also a gratitude for the challenges and the struggles in our life. There's a story about father and son who went for a hike in the woods, and they found a butterfly cocoon. So they brought it home as a little science experiment to see what would happen. So they brought it home, the days went by, a few days, a week, and the little cocoon started to move. And the little caterpillar who was going through his metamorphosis and was starting to come out, they saw a little head come out, and he was struggling and trying to get out of his little cocoon. And the son said, Dad, can we help him? And the dad was like, yeah, let's try and help him. So they went and got a little scalpel and very carefully tried to help the little caterpillar who had become a butterfly to get out of his cocoon. So they helped him and they started cutting off the cocoon and they made it easier for him. And all of a sudden, the little butterfly plopped out and he was terribly deformed. His wings hadn't grown. There were these little tiny stubby wings that he couldn't fly with. And so they did what everyone else does, and they went to ChatGPT and figured out, why did this happen? And there's a little thing that butterflies need. They need the struggle to get out of the cocoon, because it's through struggling that the blood and everything that they need and the nutrients are able to grow the wings so that they can fly. And so often in our lives, the same thing happens. We would like God to come in with a scalpel and cut away all of the difficulties and all of the challenges. All of those things that we think that we can't be grateful for. But it's so often through those struggles that our wings grow, that we can fly. And God, as a good and loving Father, wants us to fly. He wants us to go to the heights. And it's through this gratitude, it's through recognizing both in the good and in the difficult, his blessings. So today, as we celebrate this day of Thanksgiving, let us return to Jesus, thankful for all of his gifts, thankful for healing and salvation that make us truly wholehearted. Let us live today a day of thanksgiving, and let us live lives filled with thankfulness.